to section 2 of this course, where we'll be looking at implementation strategies. We'll be looking at finance, digital finance. We're looking at methodology, metrics, and best practices. Then after this, we'll now go deep in. We'll now, after this session 3 will be to now deep dive into the system and start doing configuration using a business case. All right. The plan is at the end of this session, you should understand everything you need to learn about D365 project management methodology, implementation strategies, best practices. These things are very important because, again, when you're having conversations with either recruiters or colleagues, there's a lot of products that D365 offers. Yeah, there are a lot of, you need to understand how we deliver projects in the methodology we use. You need to understand the tools. You need to understand, the ecosystem a little bit deeper so that when you start configuring the system, you have this very broad view about dynamics. And today we're going to be looking at the first thing here is what is dynamics finance, because we have been learning dynamics as a course. Like we said, dynamics is made up of two big modules, finance and operations, or finance and supply chain. But we're now deep diving into finance, and then we'll look at what the module offers and a little bit around strategies, implementation strategies. Now, basically, finance is, let me just use my my board. So Microsoft Dynamics Finance, I would say it's we have already said it's a cloud based enterprise resource planning tool or planning system. That's number one. And one of the big, so let's say so the question is, what is D365 finance? First, we have said that D365 on its own is a cloud-based, ERP system, ERP application. Of course, cloud-based, but it's meant to do two important things. One is to automate processes, and two is to modernize finance operations. So automate processes and modernize finance operations. And if you look at finance operations, there is a lot. If you go to a typical finance department within an organization, you will see different roles and different people doing different things, from AP to ARO to GL to banking to asset accounting to reporting. A whole lot moves around. There's a lot of moving parts in finance. So the essence of Digital Finance is to see how we can reduce manual effort. That's the essence of automation. When you reduce manual efforts by automating key finance processes, two, you modernize, you improve, you standardize the finance operations within that business. And again, number two things you know about Microsoft, about digital finance, is it provides what we call the single source of truth. If you use this terminology in interview, it shows you really understand some terminologies. So there's what we call the single source of truth. Can anybody give me an idea of what you know about this? The concept of the single source of truth. Anybody, 1 minute can attempt? Or what does that, what does that mean to you? Go ahead. A hand is raised. Yeah, that's fine. We need our hands to be raised. Go ahead, Tunde.
So a practical example will mean if you are to create a customer or a vendor on the system, you only have to create it once. Or if you are to create a product, you only have to create it once. And this will be available across finance, sales, different functionality of the system. You don't have to be recreating it at every point in time.
Yeah, that's a good. Thank you for sharing that thought. Go ahead, Nonso. So,
Okay, so what I
yeah,
understand by, can you hear me, Kelechi?
go ahead. Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so what I understand by single source of truth is just like a platform or where you can be able to see something at a glance without having
Okay.
to get opinions from people. So let's say within an organization now,
Okay.
I want to use
Okay.
this. When I started learning
Okay.
SAP, the person that taught me, there's something that he said that has never leave my head. Like SAP is like, or the ERP system itself is like, he made an example of you being a chairman or a CEO of a company, and you are in Dubai having fun, like you're on holiday, and you want to check your inventory, you want to know what's been happening while you've been away. You don't need to call the inventory officer or the inventory manager to know what you have in your store at the moment. So you just need to do is just to log into your system and you're able to see that information without having to contact anybody. So that is just an example of a single source of truth. So with that, you don't need to contact anybody to get the information that you need. So the ERP
Mm.
system just gives you that truth that you want to
Okay.
find. So that's
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Nonso, for giving an example. It drives home the point. Thank you. Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Nonso. Next, that should be Derek.
Yeah,
There's
so I was
something
saying
that is still missing. Yeah.
a single point of truth. It gives a Dynamic 365 gives a holistic view of all the various operations that are into the finance and operation capability. So like the field service, the finance, the customer relation, and all this, it's possible to see that in a cloud-based system that's Dynamic F&O itself. So it gives a holistic view of all the operations. So can be that's why it interlinks across.
You're getting there. Thank you, Derek. Go ahead, Jude. That should be the last we'll take.
Yeah, I think to be honest, this word single source of truth gets thrown around a lot. But just in my own little experience, in my own little experience, single source of truth, what we've all said so far is right, but it depends on the context in which you're using the word single source of truth. So I'm going to give you a practical experience. This week at work, my integration analyst wanted to know where one data was coming from the system, right? So in
Mm,
our invoices, we always have like a short chart statement right at the end of the invoice. So that statement, she needs to know where it's coming from in D365. Now, what she discovered was it's in two places. An integration
okay.
analyst, she needs to be able to map it. She thinks it's a bad business practice to have it in two or three places, right? So what she said was, if we need to change this data, where is that single source of truth? One, I'm not telling you to have it in find it in print management, something footer. Can you tell me one field which is the single source of truth where I can get this information from? So when we say in that not using the word single source of truth is correct. So it depends on the we're all correct,
Okay.
but it depends on the context. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Yeah, all of you have a version of the truth. Yeah, but I think Jide gave some very good concept, which is 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 basically where data is entered once. So to explain this really, let me go back again. And I think this understanding is very important when you're explaining the concept of ERP, right? Again, single source of truth can also mean the what we call the one version of truth. So to just explain this, right? Let me give an example when you don't have a single source of truth so that you can now understand what it is. So when you don't have it, a single source of truth, if you have let's say you have let's say three departments, you have sales, you have warehouse, and you have finance. When you don't have the three source, when you're not operating at a single source of truth. Now, let's take stock for example. Sales thinks that there are 50 items in stock. So sales thinks that there are 15 items, 50 items. Warehouse sees 30 items in the shelf. Accounting records 40 items paid for. That's a very crazy scenario when there is no single source of truth. So different departments, we have said that ERP is integration of different business processes, you know, and you have to understand it from that context that every single department within a business, just as we explained last time, the concept of supermarket and the stores. So we have one source of truth because every single business process within every single unit within that business process, the expectation is that all of us should have one version of what is true. So sales, warehouse, and finance, if they have the same information, that means they are operating under the single source of truth version. But if they don't have the same information, that means it is not a single source of truth because they all have their individual truths. So sales will say, this is my truth. Warehouse will say, this is my own truth. Finance will say, this is my own truth. So once each individual department have their own version of the truth, then you're not operating under the single source of truth version. So it is only when you have that unified truth of one that's if you ask sales, if you ask finance, if you have warehouse, they all have the same version of the truth. That's the idea of the single source of truth. So it doesn't look so complex. It's just different units working together need to have the same version of the same truth. And that's why I had to, use that analogy between those two. And then when you have single source of truth, now take note that data is, it starts with data, right? Because data is what drives the truth. And in terms of data, it's entered once at the point of origin. So data is entered once. Secondly, in terms of accuracy, again, you will see that. So let me use that. Number one, in terms of data, it is entered once in the system. Number two, in terms of accuracy, it's real time. So it updates real time. So real time updates. Just explain it. So data is once, entered once. Accuracy is real time update. Visibility, which is the problem we had with the three different departments, what they were seeing. Visibility is one view. So everybody is updated. So sales gets updated, warehouse gets updated, finance gets updated with that one single entry with the same version of truth. And of course, in terms of decision, everybody has confidence. Like there's whether you're in sales, whether in finance, whether in warehouse, there's this confidence across the business that our data across these businesses are correct. If you put it into context, for example, let's say a sales rep enters a sales order, in the system, right? Automatically, that sales order will trigger some request in inventory, or it drops in inventory. Automatically, production team, can see the demand. Let's say, for example, want to produce a mouse, for example. Sales places the order, inventory releases the quantity based on the order. Production also gathers information based on the number of inventory they need to do that production. And of course, finance also sees the revenue or the cost that is spending. That's the idea. It's just like Jide said, it's a different version. It depends on where you're looking at it from, but the concept is the same, right? It's about making sure that everybody in that everyone has the same version of what the truth is. And whether you're in finance, whether you're in sales, whether in warehouse, we trust that what we have is the single version of the same truth. Once that doesn't happen, that's what calls for reconciliation. That's why we use the word reconciliation. When there are versions of the truths that are different at different levels. When warehouse does not trust that this is the correct version of the truth, that calls for reconciliation. And why are we reconciling? So that we'll go back to the single version. That's why people do reconciliation. It's not for the fun of it. It's so that we can return. It's just when you deviate from the single source of truth, you need reconciliation to push you back to the single source of truth version, because that's the best version to be in. And that's why we do reconciliation from time to time once we deviate from those versions. Or it could be as a result of system errors from the users, but once we have deviated from the single source of truth, then we need to go back. And the only way to go back is to do your reconciliations. So that's the idea. It's simple. It's just that you need unified view from every single department working together. And again,
Sorry.
that's just yeah. Again, that's just bringing
Sorry,
us
just
to yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, just before I lose my thought, yeah, I just wanted to ask. Sorry for interrupting. What,
Sure.
in your own experience, right? What causes things like this to happen, where organizations don't have a single source of truth, and you just find like
That's it.
things are disjointed in terms of data?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think it's so many. I mean, so many reasons. One could be, so principles guide the way we do transactions in systems. For example, one of them is in finance. In finance, we have international reporting standards, we have international accounting standards. In procurement or logistics, they all have their principles. In manufacturing, there's principles. So one of the things that would cause one of the reasons would be, you know, one is a user not understanding these principles, or a user, it could be a user error. Let me put it like that. So you can post a transaction that negates one of these principles and it throws up an issue within the system, right? Second could be maybe a glitch. For example, one that is very similar is the concept of what we call GRIR, goods received and invoice received. It's a reconciliation account. So some accounts in the system have been termed reconciliation account because if you don't reconcile them, it doesn't give you the single source of truth version. So even the producers of ERP know that some transactions can throw you out of the single source of truth version. So they created accounts we call reconciliation account to hold those information pending when you do your reconciliation. So for example, if I raise a PO and I do a goods receipt and I have not made payment, or I have received the item but I have not posted that in the warehouse, but I've not done goods received, some things are pending in the system. And that is one of the major issues we have. User errors, right? Some things are, or you have made physical payment, but you have not come to the system to post that payment, or you posted the payment, but the payment is hanging in the bank. So a lot of issues can throw that single source of true view out of the balance. So that's why it is important that the only way to verify that we're in the same page is when we do one of the things we do in finance is bank reconciliation. If you don't do bank reconciliation, you don't have the final version of your financial single source of truth. Again, another one is assets. If you don't do your depreciation, amortization, certain things within the system, you don't have the final version of the single source of truth. So for you to check that you are indeed complying with these versions, users need to complete their transactions. Like, users need to make sure they are doing the right thing in the system. And if you check, there are audit trails, transaction audit trails in these ERPs that flags when they have issues within the system. You will see it will flag. Sometimes if you want to pay, if you have POPRO, and there's a quantity, if you do your two-way, three-way match, and there is a quantity discrepancy, the system will not allow you post that transaction. So also ERPs have put workflows within their systems to checkmate this issue of deviation from the single source of truth. So generally I think 80% is it's user-based errors. Secondly, it could be glitch within the system. Maybe some transactions will need to go through some not just workflows now, but there's this job behind the scene, jobs that are run behind the scene, heavy transactions. If there's a glitch, then it will affect what you call as the version of your single source of truth. Because it impacts, if the transaction does not complete successfully, then it will impact other areas of the system. So, and that's a very good question. If we're not, and that's why people will need consultants every single time. Because once there are these issues within the system, then the next thing is to find the skills, the people who can help you resolve these issues. That's why we have BAU activities, we have support teams. Wow, what are they supporting? They are helping making sure that the system maintains that single source of truth ideology within the system. That's how we have support teams. So that when there are errors, where there are issues, where there are problems, we have people who can resolve those issues and take us back to make sure that the system gives that single source of truth. Otherwise, it will be chaos. We'll just have a system that we cannot rely on. That's why reliance is very important. Accuracy is very important. Decision making, visibility,